Hello everyone, and welcome back to Freedom Harvest Farms. My name of course is Aislinn Campbell, and back behind the screen that's helping me out back there is my mom, Vicki Jameson. We're so glad to have you here, and we also want to say Happy Father's Day to all of those that are celebrating today in whatever capacity you're celebrating in. We love that. And so I hope that you have the best day. I'm excited to celebrate all of the amazing things that my dad does on a regular basis. One of the things we're going to talk about this morning, it's clearly summer. Can you hear the summer in the background? One of the things that we're going to talk about today is renewable resources, and there's a very important wisdom to understanding how renewable resources works. And that's one of the things I think my dad has been really good at understanding over the years, and being really resourceful and using our resources wisely, and using our renewable resources, because when you live on a tight budget and you understand the flow of energy, then you have a better idea of how to utilize that stuff the most effective way possible. If you spend a bunch of money on something, or you spend a bunch of energy creating something, when will you ever reach a point where it begins to create the renewable aspect of it? And I say all of that because I just wanted to, I'm super excited about the newest big project my dad is working on. He's actually, he's working out for me. He's working on a bunch of big projects, let's put it that way. But he's actually working on helping me build out my Yukon, and I'm going to take a road trip in August where I camp out of my, my vehicle. So like van life camping. So I'm really excited about that. But I want to go back to what we've been talking about every week. And for the past 4 weeks, now into 5 weeks, we have been looking at the Holmgren's 12 principles of permaculture. And I want to remind you that permaculture is more about lifestyle and understanding the entire aspect of it all, rather than just focusing on the agriculture or just focusing on our gardens. And so today's number 5 is about valuing and using renewable resources. Well, one of the first things you have to understand, like I said, is you have to have a wisdom of what are your resources and what's the actual value of that resource to begin with. So then you can begin to understand how long it will take for that resource to become an actual renewable resource and to renew itself. And if you've got to build something or spend money or spend energy on something, how quickly will it be able to get back into that loop and to regenerate itself? And that's, as we study regeneration, we went around the farm and we looked at, okay, here's an actual loop, okay? And so when we're talking about renewable resources, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a specific loop. And we've talked over many weeks now about all of the different ways that we can be resourceful with our resources, and that everything has a return on investment. And so how does that actually play into this permaculture concept of using and valuing your renewable resources? We get sold the concept of renewable resources all of the time in the media and by different groups that are trying to get us to create a more sustainable future. And one of the things I wanted to click into is a lot of times when we have a new project that we've engineered, or something new, even here on the farm, a new design of something that we've used that can then become a resource that we use regularly on the farm, how long will it be before we actually begin to get that resource to give us back what we spent on it? And I'm not just talking about money, I'm talking about all energy, time, labor, everything that required it. But then in addition to that, after 5, 10, 20, 25 years, are we using that resource because we spent money to use it? Or are we using that resource in a renewable way because it actually renews? And one of the things that I get concerned about in a consumer capitalistic culture is that the sales of the product and the person that originally made the product to sell is more important, valued more, than the idea of whether or not that machine, that resource actually does what it was intended to do from the very beginning, which is to create a renewable resource. And I think we're learning a lot about that as we go through another decade of learning electric cars. Well, we still have to run electric cars by using a resource. Are we getting out of what we put into a car whenever we create whatever, even if it's a basic car and we drove a brand new car off the parking lot? Speaking of my dad, this is one of the pieces of wisdom that my dad always taught me, was that you lose value on a resource so quickly, like a car, that why would you put that money in it? You will never get that money back out of it. And so that's what we're talking about that closed loop of returnable resource, of renewable resources. Is it, are you ever going to get back what you put into it? And one of the things that I talk about a lot of times as it relates to this specifically, a good example, like let's pull it out of the big ether of government wanting us to do windmills and cars and there's the windmills in the background. After 50, 110 years, is that actually doing what it was intended to do, or did we spend more money on it than it will ever return back to us? Well, here's a really good small bring it down to the garden concept, and that is these composting machines that we buy. We buy composting machines with these turning, and it's so fancy, and everybody's got it, and we were doing it. But we live on the coast where everything breaks down here. And I paid $250 or $300 or $500 for this machine. When will I ever make $250, $300 or $500 worth of compost out of that machine before it breaks down? And that's something we have to consistently think about when we're talking about renewable resources, which means we have to have wisdom and visionary ability to understand, and we have to be willing to understand that even here on the farm and anywhere we're working, just because we spent time and energy and resources on something to make it, if it's not returning back to us what we put into it, are we wasting our time by continuing to keep using that machine to do what we thought it would, to do what we thought it would do when we first created it? Is that an egoic, like arrogance of, well, I made that machine, so therefore I need it to work, so I'm just going to keep using it over and over again, even though it's not working the way I need it to work? And these are the kinds of things when you're designing new ways to think about how to do something differently. If I'm going to go on a trip in my car and I want it to be a low-cost trip, well, how much does it cost to put all of these pieces of things, to purchase these things, to get this thing, to get myself all ready to go? Is that creating an actual, I wouldn't call that a renewable resource in any way, but is it a give and take? Am I getting back what I'm giving into something? And I have to understand the actual value of things, not over the moment that it was created. It cost me $100 to do that, but over the time and the maintenance and the recovery and all of the things. Is it going to give me back what I put into it renewably over and over and over again? And these are the things that we're learning in consciousness today. These are the things that we're learning in our culture today about resources, and the idea that we know currently with the math that we've finally begun to understand that we are burning up our resources faster than we are renewing them. And what are our actual truly sustainable, renewable resources? And that's why you have folks like me coming on to talk about regenerative agriculture and different types of permaculture techniques, but to show it. What does it look like? Is it working? Am I ever going to get to the point where my business is actually a renewable resource, where everything that's occurring here on the farm is actually regenerating itself? Am I spending so much money on the machines and the gasoline and the electricity and the things that I've used to build something? Am I ever getting the money back that I put into it in order for it to be a truly sustainable? That word is really important because we started using that word years ago and it kind of got written off as a environmentalist word that doesn't really, and then sustainable includes money. Sustainable includes every piece of every resource that exists in order to get that to be a full circle, a full loop on that. Now, I put some notes out because I wanted to talk about what are the 5 renewable resources that are labeled renewable resources. Of course, we've got solar, and one of the things that I often am like, okay, how do we collect solar energy, right? And we talked about this the last week when we were talking about how biomass actually holds solar energy into it. And that a lot of times, a lot of the solar panels and things like that we use, where it's like, okay, we're going to create solar panels, and are we creating a large enough scale of solar panels? Are we spending a lot of money on the solar panels? How much are we ever going to get back in return from that, and how long is it going to take before that breaks down, before we have to fix it, before it actually returns some investment to us? So what are the truly sustainable resources or return on investment resources that we can use from solar? Well, plants hold a lot of energy, rocks hold a lot of energy, and so if we start with solar, wind turbines, hydro, water, we've got the nice pond right here where we hold water, and all we have to do is have a space for it to hold itself. And then of course when the rain comes, now we're holding on to water. Our well, it's not a complete end to end, but it definitely is a holding space where we can hold on to it. When I pulled out this rock, what I was trying to say is one of the ones on this list is geothermal. What happens with geothermal is that the rocks, and here's the part where woo-woo, that somehow old grandmother's tales or old witches' tales became something that now there's science behind what's happening there. Why do I collect quartz rocks and use them? Because of geothermal energy. That is a renewable resource. All I have to do is put it out in the sun and let it collect energy, and then it has the ability to create energy, warmth. Especially in the winter time, I'm going to go ahead and put that out in my gardens because it's going to create more warmth in my gardens. The mulch that I put out in my gardens, that's another thing. That's the biomass side of things. And so all of this is collecting energy from the sun, but it's a biomass. And so is the wood mulch that we use in the gardens over there. And then you also have to think about, in all of these particular things, solar, wind, hydro, tidal, geothermal, biomass, are we building specific machines that are going to cost us more than we're able to get back in return? Or are we situating our life in a way that utilizes that stuff the most? And this is the way in the old days, before we had really tight computers and engineering, where we could say, oh, we can as humans build that. What people did was they looked around at their property, they observed things, and they said, where does water hold? Where does the wind come from? How, if I put shade here, how can I create cool? The rocks that we live next to a mountain, a quartz mountain, and if I go into the quartz mountain at certain times of day, I can tell that that quartz mountain is actually cooler because it's shaded, because it holds water, because the rock actually holds the cooler temperatures. And so these are the things that we begin to use. And if you do that kind of stuff on your household, then you begin to understand, okay, well, I don't want to go in and just cut down a bunch of trees. So when you go into a brand new suburban neighborhood where the land has been wiped, the houses have been built, you're not creating any kind of end to end. You're spending a lot of electricity. You're spending a lot of water. There's no renewable ability on 100 acres of land, because the houses have to run electricity because there's no shade, and the soil doesn't hold any moisture in it. So we have to keep watering and watering and watering to keep our grass lawns alive. And all of these different aspects of years of people thinking about how long is it going to take for me to actually return the investment, or just simply observing it by being out in a rural farm, natural state where they can actually begin to understand, oh, I can use the wind to my advantage during these times of year, and at other times of year, the wind is a problem. So how do if I have to build a structure or I have to use some sort of a machine, how can I use it to benefit me? Windmills, not just these windmills, but old school windmills, water mills. Like, what is it and will I ever get my money back on that renewable resource? And that's a thing, the most important part I want to express today, more than anything else. Well, one thing is, come and see, go to farms, go to places where you can actually see some of this stuff in action. And And the second thing is, don't believe everything that you read when someone's trying to sell you something. Because when someone's trying to sell you something, their goal is to sell you a product and walk away with the money that you give them for that. At the end of the day, whether the product works or not, it is irrelevant, basically. And if you think about the way we now build washing machines and dishwashers and vacuum cleaners and all of that stuff, those products are built in a way that there is no ability to even fix them, renew them. They break down, they're done, they're a piece of trash. You throw them in the trash, and then you buy a new one. And who benefits from that? The earth doesn't benefit from it. You as the purchaser doesn't benefit from it. The person that's accepting the money is who benefits from it. And even if their project or their building type of thing goes out of existence after 50 years or 10 years for that matter, it doesn't really matter to them, because while there was money to be made, money was made. And a perfect example of this is, and I'm not specifically picking on the mask wearing, I'm picking on the mask making, which is all of a sudden the hottest commodity and the hottest place to make money in the world for a while was making a mask. And that lasted for 2 years, and then it was gone. And those masks are almost worthless now, sitting wherever they are, sitting in storage units and all of that kind of stuff. But it was fast cash, and it was meant to be made. And so wisdom tells you that you look at the whole picture of whether or not that's actually ever going to return something back to you. And after years of being here on the farm, I will eventually begin to see these things are returning on their investment or they are not. Is this rock with solar, geothermal, heat or cooling doing anything? Am I seeing any benefit in my gardens? Am I seeing cooler summers? Am I seeing warmer winters? Am I seeing the things that I need to have the most success that's consistently resourceful? Have I built my buildings in a way that the airflow is going to give me the most airflow? Have I built my buildings in a way that I'm going to get sun shade in the afternoons when the heat is the most oppressive? Have I given myself shade to where I can work in my gardens and I don't mind spending time working in my gardens? These are all ways to think about renewable resources beyond the thing we're being sold. It's a machine that will help us create some sort of renewable resources. So that's my little lecture for today. The best way to come out and really understand what I'm talking about is to actually come to the farm. Come visit me. There's plenty of opportunity for people to come out here to visit me at the farm. Mondays, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I have a regular group of people that are coming out. All are welcome. I also, afternoons, 6 to 8 p.m., but here's the thing, I need you to DM me, especially for the afternoon hours, and let me know that you're coming, because I move on with my day and use my time wisely, and if there's nobody here, I work on other projects that might not be great for the whole for everyone. So just message me. That's all you have to do. Just tell me, hey, I was thinking about coming out today, and I'll say, perfect, I'm open, come and join me. And then you can see what I'm talking about. And when you see these things, when you get your hands in the dirt, when you can actually look at one step at a time, how is this working? Is it working? Is it ever going to be renewable? Is it ever something that we can count on as a renewable resource? You can actually see it. The other things I want to tell you about is, of course, the podcast launches every Monday morning, and I was very grateful to have my friend Martha Hyman this week, and she is a death doula, and so we spend some time talking about death at the dinner table. Why? Because it's something just like how we aren't necessarily talking about whether the purchase of machines to create renewable resources actually giving us renewable resources. We also often don't talk about really important things like death. And how are we going to manage that whenever those things occur in our family and with our loved ones? And so I'm really excited to have that talk at the dinner table. And Wednesday is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. So minimally, wake up with the sunrise, watch the sunrise, and then watch the sunset in the evening as well. But here's the thing, come to the farm and watch the sunset with me. I'm having a summer solstice garden party. I'm pulling out all the delicious tastes, the seasonal tastes of summer. The grapes off the grapevines, the fig trees off the figs off the fig trees, beautiful red wine vinegar, and anything beautiful that we make and preserve out here at the farm. If you're interested in that, let me know. I'll give you the link to get your tickets purchased. It's going to be a lovely time on the longest day of the year. I hope you have a most beautiful Sunday. Happy Father's Day. Take a minute to listen to the wisdom of your fathers. You might be surprised.